The control room at Mercer Dynamics buzzed with panic as red error messages flooded the screens. A $100 million defense contract hung in the balance, and the company's most brilliant engineers stood frozen, helpless before the cascading system failure. Then, cutting through the chaos, came an unexpected sound, the squeak of a janitor's cartwheels. Gavin Brooks, dressed in gray coveralls and carrying a mop, set his cleaning supplies down and walked to the whiteboard. His hand moved with practiced precision, filling the surface with mathematical symbols and algorithmic structures. Through the glass wall, Sloan Mercer, the company's CEO, stood motionless in her crisp white suit, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, as she watched the night janitor solve the data architecture problem that had paralyzed her team for 3 weeks. Dawn broke over the modest 2-bedroom apartment in South Boston, casting pale light through thin curtains onto worn furniture that had seen better days. In the smaller bedroom, Lena Brooks slept peacefully, her 6-year-old face pressed against a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Flopsy, its fur faded from years of nightly comfort. Gavin stood in the doorway, watching his daughter breathe, and felt the familiar weight settle in his chest, the weight of being both mother and father, of being everything to someone so small and trusting. On the nightstand sat a photograph in a simple frame. Catherine, his wife, holding their newborn daughter hours before complications, took her life. 6 years had passed since that day. 6 years since Gavin had walked away from his doctoral program at MIT. From a career that had once seemed destined for greatness. From a future that no longer mattered without her. He moved quietly to the kitchen, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator with the efficiency of routine. Flour, eggs, milk, the simple alchemy of Saturday morning pancakes. The apartment was small, but it was theirs. The rent was manageable on his night janitor salary, and the location put Lena within walking distance of a decent public school. These were the calculations that filled Gavin's mind now, not the complex algorithms and neural network architectures that had once consumed him. He had been 29 when Catherine died, a rising star in artificial intelligence research, his dissertation on emotional learning systems drawing attention from tech companies and defense contractors alike. But grief has a way of rewriting priorities, of showing you what truly matters when everything else falls away. The apartment filled with the warm scent of butter and batter hitting the griddle. Lena appeared in the doorway, her honey blonde hair tangled from sleep, dragging Mr. Flopsy by one ear. "Is it pancake day?" she asked, her voice still soft with dreams. Gavin smiled, the only genuine smile he ever managed anymore. "It's pancake day," he confirmed, and she climbed onto the kitchen chair, her feet swinging well above the floor. While the pancakes cooked, she pulled out her sketchbook. The pages filled with drawings of robots with expressive faces, machines that smiled and cried, and showed the kind of emotions that Gavin had once tried to teach computers to understand. "Look, Daddy," she said, holding up her latest creation. "This is our family." In the drawing, she had sketched 3 figures, herself, her father, and above them, floating among clouds tinged with pink and gold, a woman with kind eyes. "That's Mommy," Lena explained. "She watches us from the pretty clouds." Gavin set a plate of pancakes in front of his daughter and poured just the right amount of syrup, not too much, because too much sugar made her asthma worse. After breakfast, he helped Lena get dressed, checked her inhaler, and packed her small backpack with coloring books and crayons. Mrs. Patel from across the hall would watch her during the day while Gavin slept. "Be good for Mrs. Patel," Gavin said, kneeling to his daughter's eye level. "Always am," Lena replied, and kissed his cheek before skipping across the hall. Gavin returned to the empty apartment and stood for a moment in the silence. Through the window, he could see the Boston skyline, the glass towers catching the morning Sunday. Somewhere in one of those buildings, his former classmates were building the future, publishing papers, filing patents, becoming the innovators they had all dreamed of being. And here he was, preparing for another night of mopping floors. But when he closed his eyes, he could still see Lena's drawing, could still feel the weight of her small arms around his neck. And he knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. The following morning arrived with unexpected formality. Gavin stood outside his apartment, dressed in the only button-down shirt he owned, the collar slightly frayed. The email had come at 6 a.m. "Miss Mercer requests your presence at 9 o'clock. Please use the main entrance." For 5 years, he had entered Mercer Dynamics through the service entrance, arriving after the engineers had left, working in the shadows of their ambitions. Now, in the full light of day, he walked through the soaring glass lobby, past the receptionist whose expression shifted from welcome to confusion as she took in his worn clothes and weathered hands. The elevator rose to the 25th floor, where the executive offices occupied a realm of polished wood and muted luxury. Sloan Mercer's assistant led Gavin through glass-walled conference rooms to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Sloan Mercer stood with her back to the door, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, her posture radiating confidence. When she turned, her gray eyes assessed him with clinical precision. "Sit," she said. And it was not quite an invitation. Gavin Saturday Sloan opened a thin folder on her desk. His employment record. 5 years of night shifts. Perfect attendance. 0 complaints. Gavin Brooks, she read aloud. MIT. Dropout. Night custodian for 5 years. Before that, graduate research in artificial intelligence, specializing in emotional learning architectures. Dissertation abandoned. Incomplete. She looked up. Why does someone with your background clean floors for minimum wage? The question hung in the air between them, sharp and unavoidable. I have a 6-year-old daughter with asthma, Gavin said quietly. She needs consistent care, predictable schedules. Someone who's there when she wakes up from nightmares. Night custodian work provides that. I'm home when she needs me. Sloan studied him for a long moment, and something flickered in her expression, not sympathy exactly, but something close to recognition. 2 nights ago, you solved a problem that my team of 12 engineers, with a combined 73 years of experience, could not solve in 3 weeks. You did it in 40 minutes with a mop in your hand. She closed the folder. I'm offering you a position as temporary consultant on Project Aurora. Part-time, flexible hours, compensation at senior engineer rates. Gavin felt something stir in his chest, the old excitement of intellectual challenge. But close behind it came anxiety, the fear of anything that might disrupt the careful balance he had built around Lena's needs. What hours? He asked. Sloan smiled, a small expression that did not reach her eyes. Whatever hours work for you, Mr. Brooks. I'm not interested in your time. I'm interested in your mind. She stood, indicating the meeting was over. Arthur Hale is expecting you on the 15th floor. As Gavin left, Sloan returned to the window, looking out at the city she had conquered through will and intellect, and wondered about the man who had walked away from greatness to make pancakes for a little girl. The 15th floor conference room fell silent when Gavin entered, still wearing his custodian uniform. 12 engineers sat around the long table, their laptops open, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. At the head of the table, Arthur Hale, the silver-haired CTO, rose with a welcoming smile, but it was Jason Marlowe who spoke first. The lead engineer, young and sharp-featured, leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed. Are we really bringing janitorial staff into product development now? He asked, his tone carefully positioned between jest and insult. Several engineers laughed uncomfortably. Arthur's expression hardened. This is Gavin Brooks, he said firmly. He's the reason we still have jobs. Wednesday night, while you were all at home, Gavin identified the recursive loop in our emotional weighting algorithm. Show some respect. Gavin took a seat at the far end of the table, saying nothing, while Arthur launched into a review of Project Aurora's current status. The presentation was technical, dense with jargon, but Gavin followed it easily. Aurora was an artificial intelligence system designed for military applications, intended to process battlefield data and make strategic recommendations with human-like judgment. The military wanted an AI that could understand context, nuance, the kind of subtle emotional factors that separated good decisions from catastrophic ones. The current architecture uses a standard neural network with emotional tags applied post-processing, Jason was explaining. We weight certain outcomes based on predicted emotional responses. But the system keeps defaulting to pure logic trees. It can't sustain emotional reasoning through complex decision chains. He looked directly at Gavin. Unless our custodial consultant has a better idea, the room waited. Gavin thought about walking out, about returning to his simple life of mops and predictable schedules. But then he thought about Lena's drawings, about robots with feelings. Emotions aren't tags, he said quietly. They're not something you apply after the fact. They're part of the processing itself. Your architecture is backwards. Jason leaned forward, his interest now genuine despite himself. Explain. Gavin stood and walked to the whiteboard. You're trying to teach the AI to consider emotions after it's already analyzed the data. But humans don't work that way. We feel while we think. You need a parallel processing layer that runs emotional context alongside logical analysis from the first moment of data input. Not post-processing. Continuous integration. He began sketching, his hand moving with confidence, As the architecture took shape, a dual-layer network, where emotional context and logical analysis informed each other at every decision node. The room had gone completely silent. Arthur moved closer to the board, his expression intense. "That would require rewriting the entire core architecture," he said slowly. "Which is exactly what we need to do. This is brilliant." The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Gavin found himself at the center of it, answering questions, feeling his mind come alive in ways it had not since before Catherine died. When the meeting finally ended, Arthur walked Gavin to the elevator. "Can you work with us on this? A few hours a week? Whenever you're available?" Gavin nodded, feeling something close to happiness. As the elevator doors closed, he did not see Jason Marlowe watching from down the hall, his expression calculating and cold. The next 3 weeks blurred into a strange double life. Gavin worked with the Aurora team 3 mornings a week, arriving at 8 after dropping Lena at school, leaving by 1 to pick her up. He learned to move between worlds, the world of advanced AI architecture and the world of playground games and bedtime stories. At night, after Lena fell asleep, he returned to Mercer Dynamics in his custodian uniform, mopping the same floors he had walked across that morning. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. The Aurora team gradually accepted him, drawn in by his quiet competence and the elegance of his solutions. The parallel processing architecture he had proposed was working, showing improvement in every test. Arthur championed the work, bringing updates to Sloan Mercer weekly, while Jason maintained his careful distance. Late one evening, while Gavin was cleaning the 15th floor conference room, he noticed one of the security cameras following his movement. Somewhere 25 floors above, Sloan Mercer sat in her dark office, watching the night janitor dust the furniture. She had taken to reviewing the security footage in the evenings, trying to understand this man who had walked away from everything she valued. On one particular recording, she watched Gavin pause in his cleaning to take a video call. His daughter appeared on his phone screen, her small face bright with excitement. "Daddy, I made a new robot," Lena exclaimed, holding up a drawing. "This one understands when people are sad and gives them hugs." Gavin's face transformed as he looked at his daughter. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said softly. "That's exactly what the world needs, robots that know how to care." When the call ended, Gavin stood still for a long moment before returning to his mop, and Sloan Mercer found herself smiling in her dark office, feeling something she had not felt in years, a crack in the armor she had built around her heart. But not everyone was moved by Gavin's presence. Jason Marlowe spent his evenings going through code, looking for opportunities. He began making subtle changes to Gavin's emotional context layer. Tiny alterations that would not be obvious until the system was under stress. It was sabotage. Careful and calculated. Jason told himself he was protecting the company from an unvetted outsider. But late at night, he knew it was about something simpler. He could not stand watching a janitor succeed where he had struggled. On a Thursday afternoon, as autumn rain streaked the windows, Arthur Hale announced that the Aurora demonstration had been moved up 2 weeks. The Military Oversight Committee wanted to see the system in action. The team erupted into anxious energy, and in the chaos, Gavin received a text from Mrs. Patel. "Lena's asthma bad today. Can you come?" He left immediately, running 6 blocks through the rain to find his daughter on the couch, her inhaler in her small hand. Her breathing labored but not critical. "I'm okay, Daddy," she wheezed, trying to smile. Gavin held her, counting her breaths until they steadied. This was what mattered. No algorithm was worth missing this moment. That evening, Sloan Mercer found him in his custodian uniform, mopping the executive floor. "Your daughter?" she asked. He nodded. "She's fine. Asthma flare-up. Under control now." Sloan stepped closer. "You left in the middle of a critical meeting." It was not quite an accusation. Gavin met her eyes steadily. "Yes, I did." They stood in silence, and Sloan found herself wondering what it would feel like to be loved so completely. "Arthur tells me your contextual framework has improved system accuracy by 37%, she said finally. "The demonstration is in 11 days. I'd like to offer you a full-time position after the demo. Senior architect level. Full benefits." Gavin set down his mop. "Full-time means what hours?" "Standard business hours. 9 to 6, more or less." Gavin shook his head slowly. "Lena gets home from school at 3:15. If I'm working until 6, I miss dinner with her, homework, bedtime stories. I miss the hours that matter." Sloan stared at him, genuinely baffled. "You could hire care." With the salary I'm offering, but Gavin interrupted gently. I don't want someone else to raise my daughter, Miss Mercer. I want to raise her myself. That's the whole point. As Sloane returned to her office, she found herself thinking about her own childhood boarding schools and summer camps. Parents who showed love through expensive gifts but never learned to just be present. She wondered, for the first time in her carefully planned life, whether she had been chasing the wrong things all along. The morning of the preliminary demonstration arrived gray and cold, November wind rattling the windows. The Aurora team had gathered at 6 a.m., running final checks. Gavin arrived at 7, having left Lena with Mrs. Patel earlier than usual. At 9:30, as Arthur was giving the team a final pep talk, the main display screen flickered and went red. Error messages cascaded across monitors. The Aurora system had crashed completely. The room erupted into controlled panic, engineers shouting, keyboards clattering. Gavin moved to his terminal and began tracing the error logs. Within minutes, he found that someone had altered the core integration protocols in his emotional context layer, introducing a recursive loop that fed back on itself until the entire system collapsed. He looked up and found Jason watching him. And in that moment, they both knew. Can you fix it? Arthur's voice cut through the chaos, desperate. Gavin checked the time. 9:45. The committee would arrive in 15 minutes. Yes, he said quietly, but I need everyone to step away from the system. No one touches anything. Arthur did not hesitate. Everyone out. Gavin has full access. The room cleared, leaving Gavin alone with the broken system. His hands moved with practiced precision, isolating the corrupted modules, restoring the original protocols, rebuilding the framework. At 9:58, the system came back online. Green indicators flooded the screens. Gavin walked to the door and opened it. We're good, he said simply. At 10 o'clock precisely, the Military Oversight Committee entered 4 officers in dress uniform and 2 civilian analysts in conservative suits. Sloane Mercer met them at the door, her presence commanding. Gentlemen, welcome. The demonstration began. For the next 90 minutes, Aurora performed flawlessly. The system analyzed complex battlefield scenarios, weighing tactical options against predicted emotional responses. During the question period, one of the civilian analysts posed a challenge. Your system claims to understand emotion, but emotion requires lived experience. How does an AI learn to value something like fear or hope without having experienced these things itself? Arthur gestured to Gavin. Perhaps our consultant should answer. Gavin stood reluctantly and moved to the front of the room. He looked at the assembled committee and felt completely out of place. But then he thought about Lena, about the way she drew emotions onto her robots' faces. You're right, he said quietly. An AI can't experience emotion the way humans do, but it can learn patterns. My daughter draws pictures of robots with feelings. She gives them expressions: happy, sad, worried. She's teaching them empathy by example. That's what we're doing here. We're teaching Aurora by showing it thousands of scenarios where emotion shaped outcomes until it learns to recognize those patterns. It's not perfect. It will never feel what we feel, but it can learn to understand that feelings matter. The room was silent for a long moment. Then one of the military officers, a colonel with gray hair, nodded slowly. That's the most honest answer about AI I've ever heard. After the committee departed, the team erupted into celebration. Sloane stood to the side, watching Gavin, seeing the way he checked his watch. At 3:15 exactly, he caught her eye and pointed to the door. She nodded. He slipped out quietly, hurrying to catch the bus that would get him to Lena's school on time. Sloane watched him go and found herself making a decision she did not yet fully understand. The next morning, Sloane did something she had never done before. She cleared her schedule and went looking for Gavin. She found him in the maintenance office in the basement, changing into his custodian uniform. Miss Mercer, he said, surprised. Is something wrong? She shook her head. I wanted to thank you. And to apologize. I approached the full-time position wrong. I was trying to fit you into my idea of what success looks like, instead of respecting what success means to you. Gavin studied her, seeing vulnerability carefully hidden but present. Thank you, that means a lot. They stood in awkward silence. Can I ask you something? Sloane said finally. Why did you really leave MIT? Gavin smiled. That sad expression. When Catherine died, I was faced with a choice. I could chase the career, put Lena in daycare for 12 hours a day, and maybe build something impressive. Or I could raise her myself. Be there for scraped knees and bedtime stories and all the small moments that add up to a childhood. I chose the small moments, and I've never regretted it. Sloane felt something shift inside her chest. I think you might be the bravest person I've ever met, she said softly. Gavin laughed. I'm just a guy who mops floors and makes pancakes. But Sloane shook her head. No, you're a man who gave up everything the world told him to value for the one thing that actually matters. The weeks following the demonstration passed in a blur of final preparations. The Military Oversight Committee had approved the Aurora project, triggering the release of $50 million in funding. The team worked around the clock, preparing for the final demonstration. Gavin maintained his careful balance, but the strain was beginning to show. One evening, as he was cleaning the conference room, Sloane found him simply sitting in one of the chairs. Too exhausted to move. You're killing yourself, Gavin, she said. He looked up, too tired to argue. I'm fine. She sat down across from him. No, you're not. And when the final demonstration comes in 3 weeks, you're going to need to be sharp. Sloane leaned forward. I want you to let someone help you. Just for the next 3 weeks. My company has a corporate apartment on the 20th floor, fully furnished, currently empty. Stay there during the week. We'll arrange for a daycare spot for Lena at the facility 3 blocks away. I'll cover the cost. Consider it a project bonus. Gavin started to object, but Sloane raised a hand. This is not charity. This is me protecting my investment. Take the help, Gavin. Just for 3 weeks. She placed a keycard on the table. 20th floor, apartment 203. Think about it. After she left, Gavin sat holding the keycard. Pride told him to refuse, but exhaustion told a different story. Maybe being strong meant knowing when to let others carry part of the weight. The corporate apartment was nicer than anywhere Gavin had lived since graduate school. Lena ran from room to room, delighted. It's like we're rich, Daddy. Gavin smiled, though the words hurt. They were not rich. They were guests in someone else's life. But he had to admit, the convenience was undeniable. The daycare was excellent, and being in the building meant he could focus fully on Aurora during the day, then be with Lena in the evenings. Sloane found excuses to visit the 20th floor. One evening, she arrived during Lena's bedtime routine and stood quietly in the hallway, watching through the open door as Gavin performed the cloud ritual. Father and daughter sat by the window, and Lena pointed to a cloud-tinged pink by the setting Sunday. That's Mommy's cloud, she said confidently. She's watching us tonight. Sloane felt something break open inside her chest, a longing for something she had never known she wanted. When Lena went to bed, Gavin found Sloane still standing in the hallway. You're not intruding, he said. Come in, if you want. They stood together by the window, looking out at the city lights. You're a remarkable father, Sloane said finally. Lena is lucky to have you. They talked for an hour, about childhoods and choices, about what success really meant. Sloane found herself sharing things she had never told anyone about the loneliness that came with always being the strongest person in every room. When Sloane finally left, returning to her own empty penthouse apartment, she realized she was crying. The tears were not sad exactly. They were the tears of someone discovering that the life they had built had been missing something essential all along. The night before the final demonstration, the Aurora team gathered for a last check of all systems. Everything was perfect. Arthur dismissed the team at 10 p.m., telling them to get rest. Gavin remained in the conference room after the others left, thinking about Catherine, wondering what she would think of his life now. He did not hear Sloane enter until she spoke. Can't sleep either? He turned, seeing her in jeans and a sweater, her hair loose. She looked younger, more vulnerable. Just thinking, he said. She moved to the window, standing beside him. About tomorrow? He shook his head. About everything. About how you end up in places you never expected. Sloane took a breath, gathering courage. I've spent my entire adult life building this company. I've sacrificed everything because I believed that success required total dedication. But watching you these past 2 months, I've started to question everything I thought I knew. She turned to face him. You've changed me, Gavin. Changed how I think about what it means to live a good life. Gavin felt something shift in his chest. A door he had kept locked for 6 years beginning to open. I need to tell you something too, he said quietly. These past weeks have woken up parts of me I thought were dead. You've reminded me that I'm more than just Lena's father. That's a dangerous thing to remember, because it complicates everything. but I'm grateful for it." Sloane reached out and took his hand, and they stood there by the window, two people who had built walls around their hearts, beginning to imagine what it might be like to let those walls come down. After a long moment, Sloane squeezed his hand and let go. "Get some sleep, Gavin. Tomorrow is important." She left, and Gavin remained by the window for a long time, wondering what tomorrow might bring, beyond the demonstration, beyond the contracts and careers. The morning of the final demonstration arrived clear and cold, December sun casting long shadows across Boston. The main auditorium had been transformed into a presentation theater. The Military Oversight Committee arrived at 9 sharp, accompanied by a 2-star general, 3 Pentagon analysts, and 2 senators from the Armed Services Committee. Gavin sat in the front row with the Aurora team, wearing the sport coat that Sloane had bought him, feeling completely out of place. Arthur stood at the podium, composed and confident, while Sloane sat to the side, her expression revealing nothing. The presentation began with an overview of Aurora's capabilities, then moved into live demonstrations. The system analyzed complex scenarios with remarkable accuracy. Then came the question period, and it was one of the senators who posed the defining challenge. "I've seen plenty of AI systems that claim to understand human factors, but I've never seen one that actually did. What makes Aurora different?" Arthur looked at Gavin, and there was a question in his eyes. Gavin stood slowly and walked to the stage. He looked out at the assembled officials and thought about Lena's drawings, about robots with feelings. "Senator, you're asking the right question," Gavin said quietly. "How do we teach a machine to value things that can't be quantified? The truth is, we can't. Not completely. Aurora will never experience courage the way a soldier does, but it can learn to recognize these things in human behavior." He paused. "My daughter is 6 years old. She draws pictures of robots with emotions. She's teaching them empathy by believing they can have it, by showing them what it looks like. That's what we're doing with Aurora. We're teaching it by example, showing it thousands of scenarios where human qualities like courage or fear or love changed everything. It learns patterns. It learns to recognize that a unit with high morale fights differently than a demoralized one." The auditorium was completely silent. "I'm not a soldier. I'm a father who spent the last 6 years raising a little girl alone, trying to teach her to be kind in a world that doesn't always value kindness. What I've learned is that the most important things can't be programmed or quantified. They have to be lived, demonstrated, embodied. Aurora is our attempt to embody those values in a system that can help protect the people who protect us. It's built on the belief that human qualities like empathy and compassion matter, even in war. Especially in war." He stopped speaking, suddenly self-conscious. But then the general stood up. The room followed his lead, and suddenly everyone was on their feet, applauding. The $100 million contract would be signed. Mercer Dynamics had won. After the officials departed, the team erupted into celebration. Sloane made her way to Gavin, who had retreated to the edge of the crowd. "You were extraordinary," she said quietly. "Will you come to my office? There's something I want to discuss." They took the elevator to the 25th floor, to Sloane's corner office. They sat by the window, looking out at the water. "I'm creating a new position," Sloane said. "Chief Integration Architect. It comes with hours that work for you, 9 to 5. With the understanding that you leave at 3:15 on school days to pick up Lena. Work from home when she's sick. Take whatever time you need for what matters." She turned to face him. "I want you to have both, Gavin. The work that fulfills you and the life that sustains you. You shouldn't have to choose." Gavin felt tears sting his eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. For understanding." Sloane reached out and took his hand, and this time neither of them let go. "I'm learning," she said softly. "You're teaching me, the same way your daughter teaches her robots. By example. By showing me what matters." They sat together in silence as the sun moved across the sky. Two people beginning to imagine a future they might build together. It was not a romantic declaration, not yet, but it was something more important, a mutual recognition, an acknowledgement that they had changed each other. 3 months passed, and spring arrived in Boston with the tentative warmth of new beginnings. Gavin had an office on the 15th floor now, with windows that looked out toward the harbor and a desk that held pictures of Lena. The Aurora project had moved into deployment phase, but the biggest change was not professional. One Saturday afternoon, Sloane arrived at Gavin's apartment, wearing jeans and a sweater, carrying groceries. "Lena invited me for dinner," she said. "Said we're making lasagna, and that I needed to learn how. They cooked together, the three of them, flour flying, sauce splattering, laughter filling the small space. Sloane proved to be a terrible cook, and Lena found this hilarious, patiently explaining basic techniques. After dinner, they built a robot together from a kit Sloane had brought. A simple LED creation that Lena insisted they make with green lights. "Why green?" Sloane asked. Lena looked at her with childlike seriousness. "Because green means go. Green means yes. Green means love when you use it right. It makes things come alive." She attached the final LED, and the robot lit up. "See? It's alive now. It has feelings because we gave them to it." After Lena went to bed, Gavin and Sloane sat on the small couch, drinking tea, talking quietly. "I never thought I could have this," Sloane said finally. "A life that felt real, that mattered in ways beyond business success." Gavin set down his cup and turned to face her. "And now?" She smiled. "Now I think maybe the bravest thing I ever did was knock on your door with groceries. Maybe letting yourself need people is harder than never needing anyone at all." Gavin reached out and took her hand. "I was terrified of this. Terrified of opening my heart again. Of risking the kind of loss that almost destroyed me before. But Lena keeps telling me that robots need to learn to feel, and I realized that maybe I need to relearn it too." They sat in comfortable silence, and then Sloane said, "I want to be part of this, Gavin. Part of your life, Lena's life. Not to replace anything, or change anything, but to add to it, to build something together." Gavin felt tears in his eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude, of hope. "I'd like that," he said quietly. "I'd like that a lot." On the wall above them hung Lena's latest drawing, framed now a picture titled, "Our Family," in careful crayon letters. It showed three figures, a man, a woman, and a little girl between them, all holding hands. Above them, watching from a cloud, tinged with gold and pink, was another figure, smiling down. Catherine was there too, Gavin realized. Part of the family in the way that lost loves always remain part of us. The drawing captured something true about second chances, about how families are built not just by blood, but by choice, by showing up, by learning to care again even when it's frightening. Sloane had learned to value things beyond success. Gavin had learned that healing did not mean keeping his heart locked away forever. And Lena, wise beyond her years, had understood all along that love was what brought things to life, whether robots or families or hearts that had forgotten how to hope. Outside, the spring evening deepened into night. And in the small apartment in South Boston, three people found themselves becoming something new together. Not perfect, because perfection was never the point, but real, and present, and alive with the kind of ordinary magic that happens when people choose each other, day after day, in all the small moments that add up to a life worth living.